The next morning, Captain Lee and his team were escorted through different corridors than before. These paths were wider, with higher ceilings covered in symbols that seemed to move when no one was looking directly at them. The walls showed images of space battles, construction projects, and ceremonies with thousands of different alien species all bowing to the same few types of rulers. Propaganda, Dr. Park whispered to Lee as they walked. Their escort today was different too. Instead of the blue-skinned Velshan, they were led by something that looked like a walking tree made of metal, with lights blinking in patterns along its branches. "I am Guide Mortex," it said in a voice like grinding gears. "Today you will appear before the Grand Assembly for classification. You will answer all questions truthfully. You will show proper respect. Any deviation from protocol will result in immediate reclassification to the lowest service tier." "What exactly is the lowest service tier?" Commander Kim asked. The metal tree stopped walking and turned to face him. "Species assigned to waste processing and hazardous material handling. Average lifespan after assignment, 4 standard years." Kim's face went pale, but he said nothing more. The Grand Assembly Hall was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above, and curved walls stretched out in all directions. Thousands of seats were arranged in circles, each one occupied by a different type of alien. In the center was a small platform with 4 chairs. "The accused will be seated," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Lee bristled at the word accused, but took his seat along with Park, Kim, and Yu-Jin. Around them, thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and other things that might have been eyes stared down at them. A figure floated down from the highest seats. It looked like a jellyfish made of pure energy, glowing with soft purple light. When it spoke, the words formed directly in their minds rather than coming through their ears. "I am High Arbiter Quindal of the Ethereal Collective, oldest of the Council species. We gathered today to classify the species known as humans and assign them their role in galactic society." Another being approached the platform. This one looked like a giant insect with 6 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light in rainbow patterns. "I am Trade Minister Gorthek of the Commerce Guild. We have studied human capabilities and find them adequate for several service positions." A third figure joined them, and Lee felt his blood run cold. It was similar to their escorts from yesterday, but larger and wearing robes covered in the same eye-hurting symbols. "I am Counselor Veltar of the Hegemony. We have reviewed human psychological profiles and find them suitable for labor assignments." High Arbiter Quindal's light pulsed brighter. "Let the classification begin. Humans, state your species' greatest achievement." Dr. Park stood up. "We achieved faster than light travel and came here seeking peaceful contact with other intelligent species. FTL technology." Trade Minister Gorthak clicked his mandibles together. "Impressive for such a young species. How long did it take your people to develop this capability?" "About 60 years from our first atomic weapons to our first FTL flight," Park answered truthfully. The hall erupted in surprised chatter. Thousands of aliens spoke at once in hundreds of different languages, creating a sound like a storm made of voices. Counselor Veltar raised one hand, and silence fell immediately. 60 years? Most species require 3 to 5 centuries to progress from atomic theory to FTL capability. This is unusual. "Why is it unusual?" Captain Lee asked, standing up beside Dr. Park. The 3 council members looked at each other. High Arbiter Quindal's light flickered. "Species are not typically permitted to ask questions during classification." "I wasn't asking permission," Lee said calmly. "I was asking why you think our development speed is unusual. What took other species so long?" Another wave of whispers rippled through the assembly. Commander Kim tensed in his seat, ready to fight, but Lee held up one hand to keep him calm. Trade Minister Gorthak's eyes shifted colors. "Most species require guidance to develop advanced technologies safely." "Guidance from whom?" Dr. Park asked, also standing now. "From the Council, naturally," Counselor Veltar said, but his voice sounded less certain than before. "So other species couldn't develop FTL on their own?" Lee pressed. "They needed help from species that already had it. This line of questioning is inappropriate, High Arbiter Quindal said, but the energy being's light was flickering rapidly now. We are here to classify humans, not to discuss council procedures. Engineer Yu-Jin stood up from her chair. Actually, I think this is exactly what we should discuss. How did the first species develop FTL if everyone needs guidance from someone who already has it? The silence in the Great Hall was deafening. Thousands of aliens stared down at the four humans, who had just asked a question that apparently no one had ever asked before. Counselor Veltar spoke first, his voice harsh. The founding species of the Council are naturally superior. We developed these technologies through our own advanced capabilities. All of you? Lee asked. At the same time? Or did some of you have help from others? The historical details are not relevant to your classification, High Arbiter Quindal said quickly. I think they are, Dr. Park said. Because if some of your founding species received help from others, then the principle you're using to classify everyone else doesn't apply to yourselves. Trade Minister Gorthak's mandibles clicked rapidly. Humans show concerning levels of analytical thinking and resistance to authority. These traits suggest assignment to supervised labor roles. Wait, Commander Kim said, standing up as, well, you're going to make us slaves because we ask questions? The term slaves is inaccurate, Counselor Veltar said. You would be productive members of galactic society, contributing your capabilities under proper guidance. Whose guidance? Yu-Jin asked. Council species, naturally. And who guides the council species? We require no guidance. We are the natural leaders of galactic civilization. Dr. Park smiled, and Lee realized she had been leading the conversation toward this moment. So let me understand this correctly. You classify species based on whether they can develop technology independently. But the species that can't develop technology independently are put to work serving the species who can. And the species who can develop technology independently are naturally suited to rule over everyone else. That is a simplified but accurate description, High Arbiter Quindal admitted. Then how do you classify a species that developed FTL faster than anyone else in recorded galactic history? Park asked. The three council members looked at each other again. None of them had an immediate answer. Furthermore, Park continued, how do you classify a species that shares their technology freely instead of using it to dominate others? Shares? Freely? Trade Minister Gorthak's voice rose to a high buzz. Of course, Lee said. The plans for our FTL drive are available to any human scientist who wants them. We believe that knowledge belongs to everyone, not just to the people who discover it first. This is completely contrary to natural order, Counselor, Veltar sputtered. According to whose definition of natural order? Yu-Jin asked innocently. The hall erupted again, but this time the noise was different. Instead of surprised chatter, there were angry shouts and what sounded like arguments breaking out between different groups of aliens. High Arbiter Quindal's light flared bright enough to hurt their eyes. Silence! The hall went quiet, but Lee could feel tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Humans will be classified as under review until the council can determine appropriate placement, Quindal announced. Under review? Trade Minister Gorthak asked. That classification has not been used in over 800 years. Because no species has presented such unusual characteristics in over 800 years, Counselor Veltar snapped. What does under review mean for us? Lee asked. You will remain on Nexus Prime while the council debates your final classification, Quindal explained. You may move freely within designated areas and observe council society. Do not interfere with normal operations. As they were escorted out of the Grand Assembly Hall, Dr. Park whispered to Lee, Did you see how many different species were in that audience? Hundreds, maybe thousands, Lee replied quietly. And how many were asking questions along with us? Lee thought about it. During the chaos, he had noticed several groups of aliens who seemed to be having heated discussions among themselves. Quite a few, actually. Exactly, Park smiled. I don't think we're the first species to wonder about these things. We might just be the first ones brave enough to ask the questions out loud. Commander Kim was less optimistic. Or we might be the first ones stupid enough to challenge a government that's been in power for thousands of years. Maybe, Lee admitted. But did you notice something else? They didn't have good answers to our questions. For rulers of a galactic civilization, they seemed pretty unprepared to explain how their system actually works. Engineer Yujin looked back at the Great Hall as they walked away. Captain, I think we just broke something important, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad. Lee thought about the thousands of different species they had seen, all serving the same few types of rulers, all accepting a system that none of them had apparently questioned before. Captain Lee Daeho stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, watching the stars through the main window. The ship had been traveling for 3 months now, moving faster than light itself. It still felt like magic to him, even after all this time in space. Captain, we're getting something strange on the sensors, said Commander Kim Tae-won from his station. His voice was tight with worry. Kim had been a soldier before joining this mission, and he never liked surprises. Lee walked over to look at the readings. Numbers and shapes moved across the screen, showing objects in space around them. What am I looking at, Commander? Ships, sir. Lots of them. They just appeared out of nowhere, surrounding us. Kim's hand moved closer to the weapons. Controls. I count at least 50 vessels, all different designs. None match anything in our databases. Dr. Park Soman looked up from her research station. She was the smartest person on the ship, speaking 12 Earth languages and studying alien life forms they might meet. Captain, I'm picking up a transmission. It's being sent in perfect Korean. The bridge went quiet. They were light years from Earth, in a part of space no human had ever seen before. No one should know their language. Put it through the chai speakers, Lee ordered. A voice filled the bridge, speaking Korean with no accent at all. Human vessel Soul's Pride, you are now in the territory of the Galactic Council. You will stop your engines and prepare to be boarded for classification. Lee felt his stomach tighten. Classification? That didn't sound good. This is Captain Lee Dae-ho of the Earth ship Soul's Pride. We come in peace and request safe passage through your space. There was a pause before the voice came back. Captain Lee, you do not understand your situation. All species that enter Council space must be classified and assigned their proper place in galactic society. This is not a request. Prepare for boarding. Engineer Choi Yoo-jin spoke up from the back of the bridge. She was young but brilliant, the person who had figured out how to make their faster-than-light engine work. Captain, their ships are using some kind of energy field to stop us from moving. I can't restart our FTL drive. Lee closed his eyes for a moment. This was supposed to be humanity's first peaceful contact with alien life. Instead, they were being treated like criminals. Can we fight our way out? Negative, sir, Kim said. We're outnumbered 50-1 and their weapons are more advanced than ours. Dr. Park stood up from her station. Captain, maybe we should listen to what they have to say. This Galactic Council sounds like some kind of government. If we cooperate, we might learn something important. Or we might become their slaves, Kim muttered. The alien voice came through the speakers again. You have 2 minutes to comply, or we will take your vessel by force. Lee made his decision. Open a channel. When Park nodded, he spoke clearly. This is Captain Lee. We agree to meet with your representatives, but understand that we represent all of humanity, and we expect to be treated with respect. You will receive the treatment your species deserves, Captain. A transport ship is coming to take you and 3 of your crew to Nexus Prime for your hearing. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Hearing? Yujin asked. That sounds like... We're on trial. Maybe we are, Lee said. He thought about the message they had sent back to Earth before entering this region of space. It would take months to reach home, and months more for any help to arrive. Whatever happened here, they were on their own. An hour later, Lee stood in the docking bay with Park, Kim, and Yujin. The alien transport ship had attached itself to their hull like a metal tick. The airlock opened with a hiss and their first aliens walked through. They looked almost human, but wrong in small ways. Too tall, with pale blue skin and eyes that were completely black. They wore dark uniforms covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. "I am Escort Commander Velshan," one of them said in perfect Korean. "You will come with us now." "How do you speak our language?" Dr. Park asked. The alien tilted its head. "All inferior species are studied before classification. We know everything about humanity that matters." Kim's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Lee caught his eye and shook his head slightly. "Not yet." They followed the aliens into the transport ship. The inside was too clean, too perfect. Everything was white and silver, with no decorations or personal touches. It felt like walking through a machine. During the journey to Nexus Prime, Dr. Park tried to ask questions about the Galactic Council, but the aliens only gave short, unhelpful answers. The Council was old. The Council was wise. The Council decided what was best for all species. Every answer sounded like something memorized from a book. When they finally arrived, Lee understood why it was called Nexus Prime. The space station was enormous, bigger than any city on Earth. Ships of hundreds of different designs moved around it like insects around a light. Some looked like metal flowers, others like living creatures made of crystal or energy. "So many different species," Park whispered in wonder. "So many different servants," their escort corrected. "Each has been assigned their proper role in galactic society." They were taken through corridors filled with aliens of every imaginable type. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others crawled or floated or moved in ways that made no sense. But Lee noticed something that made his skin crawl. The corridors were divided into sections marked with different colors. The blue-skinned aliens, like their escorts, walked in the center areas. Other types stayed in specific colored zones. "Why are the walkways separated?" he asked. "Each species has its designated areas based on classification," Velshan explained. "Order must be maintained." They were brought to a waiting area filled with uncomfortable metal chairs. Other aliens sat in similar groups, all looking nervous or afraid. Lee noticed that none of the blue-skinned aliens were waiting. They all seemed to be in charge. "Captain Lee Dae-ho," a new voice called out. This alien was different again, made of what looked like living crystal that shifted colors as it moved. "I am Administrator Quildan. You and your companions will be taken to your temporary quarters. Your classification hearing begins tomorrow." "What exactly does that mean?" Lee asked. "The Council will examine your species' capabilities and assign you an appropriate role in galactic society. You may be suited for labor, resource extraction, military service, or, if you are fortunate, administrative support." "And what if we refuse?" Kim asked. The crystal alien's colors shifted to dark red. "Refusal is not possible. All species serve the Council in some capacity. The only question is how." Their quarters were small but clean. 2 rooms with basic furniture and no windows. Lee gathered his team together once they were alone. "This is bad," Kim said immediately. "They're not treating us like guests or equals. We're being processed like livestock." "The technology gap is enormous," Eugene added. "Their FTL drives, their materials, their computers. We're centuries behind them." "But something doesn't add up," Dr. Park said thoughtfully. "If they're so advanced, why do they need servants? And why are there so many different species all serving the same masters?" Lee sat down heavily. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. We saw hundreds of different alien types on the way here, but only a few species seem to be in charge. In a truly advanced civilization, wouldn't everyone be equal? Or at least wouldn't the most advanced species be working together instead of ruling over everyone else?" "You think this council is not what it seems?" Lee asked. "I think we need to be very careful about what we agree to tomorrow," Park replied. "And we need to learn as much as we can about how this system really works." Kim checked his sidearm, making sure it was still there. "What if learning isn't enough? What if we need to fight?" Lee looked at each of his crew members. 3 people against a galactic government that had existed for thousands of years. It seemed impossible. But something in Dr. Park's words gave him hope. If this system was built on lies, maybe it wasn't as strong as it looked. Then we fight smart, he said finally. But first, we learn everything we can. Tomorrow we find out what this council really wants from humanity. And maybe we show them that humans don't classify as easily as they think. Outside their quarters, the great space station continued its ancient work of processing new species into the galactic order. But for the first time in centuries, something was different. The humans had arrived, and they were asking questions that no one had asked before. 3 days after the hearing, Captain Lee was learning that under review meant something very different than freedom. Their quarters had been moved to a larger section, but guards were always nearby. They could walk through certain areas of Nexus Prime, but only with an escort, and every conversation was being recorded. "The food is terrible," Commander Kim complained, poking at the gray paste on his plate. They were sitting in what their guide called a cultural exchange dining area, surrounded by representatives from dozens of other species. "Everything here is efficient, not enjoyable," Dr. Park observed. She had been watching the other aliens at nearby tables. "Look around. Does anyone look happy?" Lee followed her gaze. The dining area was full of different species, but they all sat in separate groups. No mixing, no casual conversation between different types of aliens. Everyone ate quickly and left. "It's like a prison cafeteria," Eugene whispered. "But prettier." Their escort today was another crystal being like Administrator Quildan, but smaller and with colors that shifted more quickly. "I am Assistant Monitor Krishan. You are scheduled for cultural orientation in 1 hour." "What's cultural orientation?" Lee asked. "You will learn proper protocols for interacting with council species and other classified beings," Krishan explained. "Understanding your place in galactic society is essential for successful integration." Dr. Park smiled politely. "That sounds educational. Will we meet representatives from many different species?" "You will observe appropriate interaction models, yes." As they finished eating, a new alien approached their table. This one looked almost like a human, but with green skin and large golden eyes. It moved carefully, checking over its shoulder several times. "Excuse me," it said quietly in accented Korean. "Are you the humans who asked questions at the Grand Assembly?" Lee exchanged glances with his team. "We are. I'm Captain Lee." "I am Ambassador Ray Boram of the Verdant Coalition. May I sit with you for a moment?" Assistant Monitor. Krishan's colors shifted to warning orange. "Ambassador, interspecies contact outside of official channels is discouraged." "I am aware of protocol," Ray said firmly, but she sat down anyway. "Captain Lee, your questions 3 days ago have caused much discussion among the younger species representatives." "Younger species?" Eugene asked. "Those of us classified within the last 1,000 years, Ray explained. "We have been talking about things we had not discussed before." Krishan's colors went to deep red. "This conversation is inappropriate. Ambassador, return to your designated area immediately." Ray ignored the monitor. "Captain, tonight there is a scheduled maintenance period in Sector 7. During maintenance, the monitoring systems are offline for 2 hours. If you were to become lost during your evening exercise period..." "Ambassador Ray," Krishan's voice became sharp. "Report to your handler for protocol review, immediately." Ray stood up, but as she left, she dropped a small device next to Lee's plate. He palmed it quickly. "What was that about?" Kim asked when she was gone. "I think," Dr. Park said thoughtfully, "we're about to find out how many other species have been asking the same questions we have." That evening, during their scheduled exercise time, Lee made sure to get lost. The corridors in their section all looked similar, and it was easy to take a wrong turn. Soon he was walking through areas with no escort, following the directions programmed into the small device Ray had given him. He found Sector 7 during the maintenance blackout. The lights were dimmer, and the usual humming sounds of the station were quieter. In a storage area marked Atmospheric Processing Equipment, he discovered he was not alone. 23 aliens from 16 different species sat in a rough circle. Some he recognized from the dining area, others were completely new. All of them looked nervous but determined. "Captain Lee," Ray stood up to greet him. Thank you for coming. Everyone, this is the human who asked the council to explain their classification system. A being that looked like a walking tree with silver bark spoke up. I am Scholar Mok Tae-young of the Stone Bearers. Our species was classified 800 years ago as resource extraction specialists. Our homeworld's crust contains rare minerals that the council species need. Let me guess, Lee said. You mine the minerals and they take them for free? Not for free, another alien corrected. This one had feathers and hollow bones like a bird, but stood 7 feet tall. I am Captain Zeph Sora of the Wind Dancers. We are paid in food, shelter, and protection. The council provides everything we need. But not everything you want, Dr. Park's voice said from the entrance. She had found her own way to the meeting, along with Kim and Eugene. Want is irrelevant, Scholar Mok said bitterly. We are told that our classification is based on our natural abilities and psychological makeup. Stone bearers are naturally good at digging. Wind dancers are naturally good at scouting and message delivery. Verdant Coalition members are naturally good at food production. What's natural about it? Eugene asked, sitting down in the circle. The group looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, a small alien that looked like it was made of living metal spoke up. I am Engineer Kwon Sung Min of the Forge Masters. My people created the strongest metal alloys in known space. When the council arrived, they tested our abilities and determined we were naturally suited for manufacturing work. Did they ask if you wanted to do manufacturing work? Kim asked. Want was not part of the evaluation, Kwon admitted. But here's what I don't understand, Dr. Park said. If you're all naturally suited for your assigned roles, why do you need supervisors? From council species? Why can't you just do the work you're naturally good at and trade with other species for things you need? Silence fell over the group. It was Ambassador Ray who finally answered. Because that would be chaos. The council species have advanced beyond such primitive economic systems. They provide order and stability. Do they? Lee asked. Or do they just provide themselves with free labor and resources? Captain Zeph's feathers ruffled. That is a dangerous way to think. Captain Lee, why is it dangerous? Because if it were true, then everything we have been told about galactic society would be a lie. Engineer Eugene leaned forward. What if I told you that humans developed FTL technology without any guidance from advanced species? What if I told you we share our technology freely with everyone in our society, and our civilization works just fine without anyone being assigned permanent roles they can't change? That would be impossible, Scholar Mok said. Species cannot develop advanced technology without proper guidance. The Council has explained this many times. Then how did the Council species develop their technology? Park asked. Who guided them? Another uncomfortable silence. They are naturally superior, Captain Zeph said, but her voice sounded uncertain. All of them? Lee pressed. The Ethereal Collective, the Hegemony, the Commerce Guild, and the dozen other founding species, they all just happen to be naturally superior to everyone else? Or, Commander Kim said quietly, they were the first ones to get advanced technology and they used it to make sure no one else could develop their own. Engineer Kwon's metallic skin flickered different colors. In my homeworld's history, before the Council arrived, we were developing our own spacecraft. We were close to achieving FTL flight. What happened? Eugene asked. The Council arrived first. They tested us and determined that we were not ready for space travel. Our research facilities were converted to manufacturing centers. Your research was stopped, Dr. Park said flatly. For our own safety, Kwon said automatically, then stopped. But if we had been allowed to continue, you might have developed FTL on your own, Lee finished. And then you would have been equals instead of servants. Ambassador Ray stood up suddenly. This is treason. We are discussing the overthrow of galactic order. No, Dr. Park said calmly. We're discussing the difference between order and oppression. There is no difference, Ray said, but her voice shook. The Council maintains peace throughout the galaxy. Without their guidance, there would be wars, chaos, Suffering. Is there no suffering now? Scholar Mock asked quietly. My people work 18 hours a day in dangerous mines. The average lifespan on our homeworld has dropped by 30% since classification. The Wind Dancers haven't seen our homeworld in 3 generations, Captain Zeph added. We are permanently assigned to carry messages between Council facilities. The Forge Masters are only allowed to create what the Council orders, Engineer Kwan said. We are forbidden from innovation or experimentation. Lee looked around the circle. It sounds to me like you're already suffering. The question is whether you want to do something about it. What could we do? Ray asked. The Council has ruled for 3,000 years. They have the most advanced weapons, the largest fleets, control over all trade routes. They have all those things because you give them to you, Yujin pointed out. You mine their materials, build their ships, grow their food, carry their messages. What would happen if you stopped? We would be destroyed, Captain Zeph said immediately. By whom? Kim asked. Council species don't fight their own battles. They use classified species as soldiers. What happens if the soldiers refuse to fight? The implications of that question hung in the air like smoke. This is all theoretical, Ambassador Ray said nervously. 6 months later, Captain Lee stood in what used to be the Grand Assembly Hall, watching workers remove the elevated seats where Council species had once looked down on everyone else. The curved walls were being painted over with symbols from hundreds of different species, creating a colorful mosaic that represented the new galactic cooperative. It's hard to believe how fast everything changed, Dr. Park said, joining him at the observation window. She wore new clothes now, not the simple uniform they had arrived in, but robes decorated with patterns from a dozen different worlds. Fear can make systems seem much stronger than they really are, Lee replied. Once people stopped being afraid to ask questions, the whole thing fell apart in weeks. The transformation had been remarkably peaceful. After the vote in the Grand Assembly, most Council species had simply given up. A few had tried to maintain control over their local regions, but when their security forces refused orders and their classified species walked away from their jobs, resistance became impossible. The ethereal collective had retreated to their homeworld and refused all contact. The Commerce Guild had tried to negotiate some kind of trade monopoly deal, but discovered that species were much happier trading directly with each other. The hegemony had made threats about restoring order through military force, but their military was entirely composed of classified species who were now free to leave. Captain Lee? A familiar voice called from across the construction area. Ambassador Ray approached, but she looked different now, healthier, more confident. Her green skin had a brightness it hadn't had before. Just Lee now, he corrected with a smile. I resigned my commission last month. Dr. Park and I are staying here to help with the transition. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Ray said. The Cooperative Council is meeting tomorrow to discuss the restoration project. We need human input on some of the technical challenges. The restoration project was the most ambitious undertaking in galactic history. Hundreds of species were working together to rebuild the civilizations that had been suppressed under Council rule. Lost technologies were being recovered. Abandoned research was being resumed. Entire cultures were being revived from archived records. What kind of technical challenges? Dr. Park asked. Well, the Forge Masters want to restart their materials research program, but they need help understanding some theoretical frameworks that were lost when the Council classified them. The Stone Bearers have found evidence of advanced mining, techniques in their old records, but they can't figure out how they work. And the Wind Dancers... Ray paused, smiling. The Wind Dancers want to build their own spaceships. Lee laughed. Of course they do. Flying is what they're naturally good at, right? Actually, that's another thing we need to discuss. The word natural has become problematic since your arrival. We're discovering that most of what we thought were natural traits were actually just the roles the Council forced us into. This was one of the most surprising developments since the Revolution. As species gained freedom to explore their own interests and abilities, they were discovering talents and preferences that had nothing to do with their original classifications. Stone Bearers were becoming artists and philosophers. Wind Dancers were excelling at mathematics and engineering. Forge masters were writing poetry and music. Speaking of discoveries, Dr. Park said, "How is the Archaeological Commission doing?" Ray's expression grew serious. "That's complicated. We keep finding evidence of species that simply disappeared from council records, entire civilizations that were classified and then never mentioned again." This was the dark side of the post-council galaxy. As researchers dug through archives and visited abandoned worlds, they were uncovering the full scope of what the council had done. Not all classified species had survived their assignments. Some had been worked to extinction. Others had been relocated to worlds that couldn't support them and had slowly died out. "How many?" Lee asked quietly. "At least 47 species, that we know of. Probably more. The records were deliberately destroyed in most cases." They stood in silence for a moment, thinking about civilizations that had been lost forever. "But there's good news too," Ray continued. "We've found 12 species that were thought to be extinct but actually survived on hidden colonies or remote worlds. The Harmony Singers were rediscovered last week on a planet at the edge of the galaxy. They've been living there for 800 years, preserving their culture and waiting for freedom." "That's wonderful," Dr. Park said. "Are they interested in joining the cooperative?" "Very much so. In fact, they want to contribute to the Education Initiative." The Education Initiative was another major project of the new government. Under council rule, most species had only been allowed to learn skills related to their assigned roles. Now, schools were being established throughout the galaxy where anyone could study anything they wanted. The results were remarkable. Commander Kim appeared from behind a pile of construction equipment, his uniform replaced by the practical work clothes of an engineer. "Lee, we've got the communication system online. Want to take the first test call?" They walked to the new communications center, where dozens of technicians from various species were working on quantum relay systems that made instant communication possible across the galaxy. It was technology that the Council had possessed but never shared, keeping classified species isolated from each other. "Who should we call?" Lee asked. "How about Earth?" Kim suggested. "Let them know how their first diplomatic mission turned out." Lee sat down at the control console and opened a channel to his homeworld. It took several minutes to establish the connection, but finally a familiar face appeared on the screen. Captain Lee. Admiral Chang Hae-jin, head of Earth Space Command, smiled broadly from her office in Seoul. "We've been getting reports, but we need to hear it from you directly. Did you really overthrow a galactic government?" "Not exactly," Lee replied. "We just asked some questions. The government overthrew itself. And you're all staying out there?" Lee looked around the communication center where humans were working alongside aliens in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. "There's too much to do here. This cooperative is trying to build something the galaxy has never seen before, a government based on voluntary participation and mutual benefit instead of force and exploitation." "How's it working so far?" Admiral Chang asked. Dr. Park leaned into the camera's view. "Better than we expected. When people aren't being forced to work against their interests, they're amazingly cooperative. Trade is flourishing, scientific research is advancing faster than ever before, and we haven't had a single military conflict since the transition." "What about the old council species?" Chang asked. "Are they causing trouble?" "Some are adapting," Lee explained. "The younger generations especially are embracing the new system, but others are having a hard time. When you've been told your entire life that you're naturally superior to everyone else, learning that you're just different can be painful." Engineer Yu Jin joined them at the console. She had been leading a team that was documenting and sharing technologies from throughout the galaxy. "The amazing thing is how much we're all learning from each other. Humans are good at asking questions and solving problems in unexpected ways. But stone bearers think in geological timescales, so they're incredible at long-term planning. When dancers process information in 3 dimensions naturally, making them brilliant at space navigation. Everyone has something valuable to contribute." "What about you, Lee?" Admiral Chang asked. "Any plans to come home?" Lee thought about it. "Earth. would always be home, but this new galaxy full of possibilities felt like home too. Maybe someday, but right now we're helping to write the Constitution for the Galactic Cooperative. We want to make sure the mistakes of the past aren't repeated. What kind of constitution? One based on the principle that no species has the right to control another species, Dr. Park explained. Every world, every culture, every individual has the right to choose their own path. The cooperative exists to facilitate cooperation and mutual aid, not to rule. Sounds like something humans would write, Admiral Chang observed with amusement. Actually, it's something everyone wrote together, Lee corrected. Turns out that freedom and cooperation are popular ideas throughout the galaxy. We just helped people remember that they were options. After the call ended, Lee walked back to the observation window. Outside, ships from hundreds of different species were coming and going freely. No classifications, no assigned roles, no barriers between peoples. Just beings working together because they chose to. Do you think it will last? Commander Kim asked, joining him. I don't know, Lee admitted. Building something is always harder than breaking something, but I think we've given the galaxy something it never had before. A choice. And once people know they have choices, they tend to make good ones. Dr. Park was reading reports on her tablet. The latest surveys show that average lifespan has increased on every former classified world. Education levels are rising. Birth rates are up. Art and music production has exploded. Scientific publications have increased by 400%. People are happy, Lee said simply. Captain Lee knew they were running out of time when Assistant Monitor Krishan's colors stayed permanently red during their morning escort duty. The secret meetings in Sector 7 had been happening for 2 weeks now, and the Council was getting suspicious, Captain, Dr. Park said quietly as they walked through the main commerce district. Look at the message boards. Electronic displays throughout the area showed the same announcement in dozens of languages. All classified species representatives report suspicious human activity immediately. Reward for information leading to prevention of seditious behavior. They're scared, Commander Kim observed. Good. No, dangerous, Engineer Yujin corrected. Scared people with massive military power tend to do stupid things. They were right to be worried. That afternoon, their escort changed from a single monitor to a full security detail. 6 armed guards surrounded them wherever they went. Their quarters were searched daily. All communication devices were confiscated, but it was too late for damage control. The questions the humans had asked were spreading throughout Nexus Prime like a virus. In the dining areas, classified species were sitting together for the first time in decades. In the work sectors, productivity was dropping as beings spent more time talking than working. And in the communication centers, messages were being sent to homeworlds faster than the Council could intercept them. We need to act soon, Ambassador Ray said during what everyone knew would be their last secret meeting. The Council is planning something. My handler let slip that there's going to be an emergency session about the human problem. What kind of emergency session? Scholar Mock asked nervously. The kind where they decide to make us disappear, Captain Zeff said bluntly. My people have carried messages about other troublesome species. They don't get second chances. Lee had been thinking about this moment for days. Then we don't give them the chance to make that decision quietly. What do you mean? Engineer Kwan asked. I mean, we force their hand in public. We make them show the entire galaxy what they really are. Dr. Park understood immediately. You want to call for another hearing? Not just another hearing. A full Grand Assembly session with representatives from every classified species present. And this time we don't ask polite questions, we present evidence. What evidence? Yujin asked. Lee smiled. The evidence you've all been gathering for 2 weeks. Mock, you have production records showing how much wealth your people generate versus how much you receive back. Zeff, you have population data showing how many wind dancers have died in council service. Quan, you have technical specifications proving that Forge Master alloys are superior to anything the council species produce themselves. And Ray has agricultural reports showing that Verdant Coalition worlds produce enough food to feed half the galaxy. But most of it goes to council species while her people survive on basic rations, Dr. Park added. But how do we get a Grand Assembly session? Ambassador Ray asked. Only council species can call for one. Not exactly, Lee said. I've been reading council law during our mandatory education sessions. Any species under classification review can request a final hearing to present additional evidence before classification is completed. You're still under classification review, Scholar Mock realized. And I can request that all relevant parties be present for the hearing. That means every species whose classification might be affected by humanity's final classification. Commander. Kim grinned. Which, if we argue it right, is every classified species in the galaxy. This is incredibly risky, Captain Zeph warned. If we fail, they will make an example of all of us. Our entire species could be reclassified to the lowest service tiers. If we do nothing, they'll do that anyway, Engineer Kwan pointed out. At least this way we go down fighting. Lee looked around the circle of aliens who had become his friends and allies. I won't ask anyone to take this risk, but if you're willing, we can show the galaxy what the Council really is. And maybe, just maybe, we can give everyone a choice. One by one, they all nodded agreement. The next morning, Lee submitted his formal request for a final classification hearing. By law, the Council had to respond within 3 days. While they waited, the Secret Alliance worked frantically to prepare. Dr. Park organized their evidence into a clear presentation. Commander Kim mapped the security arrangements in the Grand Assembly Hall. Engineer Yujin secretly modified their confiscated communication devices to work as broadcasting transmitters. And their alien allies spread the word through unofficial channels that something big was about to happen. On the third day, High Arbiter Quindal's response arrived. The final hearing would be held immediately, with full Grand Assembly attendance. All classified species representatives were required to attend. The decision would be final and binding. They're trying to rush it, Dr. Park observed. They don't want us to have time to prepare. Too bad for them, we're already prepared, Lee replied. The Grand Assembly Hall was even more crowded than before. Every seat was filled, and additional viewing areas had been opened to accommodate representatives from species that had never been allowed in the main hall before. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. High Arbiter Quindal floated down to the center platform, accompanied by the same council members as before. But this time, additional security forces lined the walls. Armed guards from a dozen different species, all loyal to the council. We are gathered for the final classification of the species known as humans, Quindal announced. This session will determine humanity's permanent role in galactic society. There will be no further appeals or reviews. Captain Lee stood up from the defendant's platform. High Arbiter, before classification proceeds, I request permission to present additional evidence regarding humanity's capabilities and relationship to existing galactic social structures. Permission granted, Quindal said impatiently, but make it brief. Lee activated the modified transmitter in his pocket. Unknown to the Council, everything that happened next would be broadcast to ships throughout the galaxy. Thank you. Dr. Park, please begin. Dr. Park stood and projected holographic displays into the air above the platform. Numbers, charts, and data streams filled the space, visible to every being in the enormous hall. These are production statistics from classified species worlds for the past 500 years, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the assembly hall. As you can see, the total wealth generated by classified species is approximately 40 times larger than the wealth received back by those same species. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many representatives were seeing these numbers for the first time. Trade Minister Gorthak clicked his mandibles angrily. Economic efficiency is not relevant to classification hearings. I disagree, Lee said, because this data shows that classified species are not receiving services from the Council. They are providing services to the Council. The relationship is exactly backward from what we've been told. Furthermore, Dr. Park continued, changing the display. These are technological development records. In every case where a species was approaching independent FTL capability, they were classified and their research programs were discontinued, not because they failed, but because they were succeeding. The murmurs grew louder. In the viewing areas, representatives from dozens of species were talking animatedly among themselves. Counselor Veltar stood up, This hearing is about human classification, not historical analysis. But that's just it, Engineer Yujin said, standing up as well. Human classification is impossible under your current system because your system is designed to prevent species from developing independently. We did develop independently, so we don't fit your categories. More importantly, Commander Kim added, we've now given independent FTL technology to 17 other species, so they don't fit your categories anymore either. The hall erupted. Thousands of aliens were shouting, arguing, demanding explanations. Security forces moved closer to the platform, but they were vastly outnumbered by the crowd. High Arbiter Quindal's light flared blindingly bright. Silence. This assembly is adjourned. Security, arrest the humans for sedition. But something unexpected happened. As the security forces moved toward the platform, they found their path blocked. Ambassador Ray and her allies had positioned themselves between the guards and the humans, and they weren't alone. Representatives from dozens of species were standing with them. You cannot arrest beings who are presenting evidence in a legal hearing, Scholar Mock called out, his rocky frame towering over the nearest guards. The hearing was adjourned, Counselor Veltar snarled. By whose authority? Captain Zeph demanded, her feathers bristling. Council law states that classification hearings can only be adjourned by majority vote of the full assembly. Lee grinned. They had studied the law carefully. I call for a vote. All those in favor of adjourning this hearing before classification is complete? A few hundred hands, tentacles, and other appendages rose from the council species sections. All, those opposed to adjournment? The rest of the hall exploded with raised appendages. Thousands upon thousands of classified species representatives voting to continue the hearing. High Arbiter Quindal's light flickered uncertainly. In 3,000 years of council rule, this had never happened before.